Chapter 9 of the Boy Scouts in Front of Warsaw. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Boy Scouts in Front of Warsaw, or In the Wake of War, by George Durston, Chapter 9. New clues. Walking along in the pleasant, fresh air, Warren and Ivan soon gained control of their cramped muscles. It was good to be free. They were faint from lack of food, however, and at the suggestion of one of the Boy Scouts, retraced their steps to the deserted bakery and once more raided the ovens. Then, rested and refreshed, they picked their way into the residential section where they knew the officers of the invading forces had settled themselves. Repeated questions finally led them to the building where Professor Morris and his son and daughter had been taken as spies. As they approached it, they noticed a triple guard at the gate and a large number of soldiers close around the palace. The boys hesitated. "Let's see what this all means," said Ivan. "There is some special reason for all these soldiers on guard. Perhaps we can get one of them to talk." "They're not allowed to, you know," said Warren. "We will try this," said Ivan. He took a large cake from his pocket and approached the nearest soldier. He was a young fellow, with a wistful, hungry face, and as Ivan approached, his keen eyes fastened themselves on the bread. "Eat?" said Ivan. "Yes," said the soldier, seizing the cake and biting off a great corner of it. "Bless you, brother, I was starving." "There is more where that came from," said Ivan. "If you are hungry, why don't you go eat your supper?" "Eat?" said the soldier bitterly. "Who knows how many hours we have been on guard here? I guarded a door in there all day, and now they have sent me here. The captain is so enraged he thinks of nothing of us, nothing." Ivan leaned carelessly against the wall and shrugged his shoulders. "What happened?" he asked idly. The soldier laughed. "It is funny," he said. "You are nothing but a boy, so it will not hurt to talk to you, and I have been silent so long my tongue is stiff. Besides, this is good cake. Well, know then, little brother, that some people were brought here last night with suspicious papers on them. An old man, a boy, and a beautiful girl. The old man would not explain the mysterious words in his little book, and they threatened him with death. He did not believe it. Did I tell you he was an American? He was. These Americans never fear. They simply say, 'Kill me? That is impossible. Postpone it, if you please, while I write to the consul.' It is so. Well, that old man, he could not be made to realize that Captain Handel is absolute ruler now, right here. They were brought to the state dining room this morning, and the captain told them straight what he intended to do. It was death for the old man and the boy, and he would spare the girl." The soldier laughed. "I and one other were guarding the door, so we heard." Presently the two captains came out. As they left the room, Captain Handel called back, "Half an hour, just half an hour, understand?" Then he closed the door sharply. The two captains went to a little table not far from the door and sat down. They were not for 1 second out of sight of the door. We two stood directly facing it, about 3 feet away in the hall. The half hour passed. Captain Handel looked every minute at his watch, and Captain Schmidt kept saying, "Wait, be fair." At last the time was up. They went to the door. Captain Schmidt straightened his sabre belt and threw the door wide. He looked, then he dashed in, almost upsetting Captain Handel. The room was empty. We could see. He called us, and together we searched in and on and under everything in the great room. We rapped on the wall, we examined the iron bars, but the windows had not even been opened. Captain Handel went into a fearful rage. The prisoners had disappeared as though they had never been. Even the book was gone from the table, and the package of papers the old man had guarded. We went over every foot of the place again and again. There was not an inch that sounded hollow, as though there were a secret passage. We even tore a panel out of the woodwork, and found a stone wall behind it. The soldier finished his cake and drew a grimy hand across his lip. "Ah, that was good, brother," he said. "What happened then?" asked Ivan, while Warren pressed closer. "Why, we hunted all day," said the soldier, "but of course we couldn't find them. Why should we?" "Why not?" asked Ivan. "Why not?" repeated the soldier. "Why, those were not human beings at all. The old man was too silly for a real man. The girl was too beautiful. Human beings do not disappear from a guarded room with 4 stone walls about it." The man lowered his voice and spoke in a whisper. "They were devils, of course," he said. The boys were silent. "Of course," said the soldier, "Captain Handel would not believe anything so simple. He would not believe they were gone. So tonight he fixed them. It's all over now, and I wish I could get some supper." "What did he do?" asked Ivan, trying to keep the anxiety out of his voice. "He dynamited the room," said the soldier calmly. "That part of the palace is in ruins. The stones fell like rain. No human being could have lived in it. But they did not find the bodies. However, they may be buried under the wreckage. I don't believe it, though." He sighed. "That was good cake," he said. "Here's another," said Warren. He clutched Ivan and sank into the shadow. He was shaking. "It's all over, Ivan," he whispered. "They have killed them." Ivan pondered. "I don't know," he said finally. "One thing is sure. If all those soldiers could not find them, it's certain we can't. They are either safe, Warren, or else they are where we can never help them any more. It seems to me that the only thing to do now is to go straight to Łódź and find Eleanor." "Yes, that is the only thing to do," said Warren. "If I let myself think about Evelyn, I will go mad. We will go to Łódź." "How?" asked Ivan. "We will have to walk," replied Warren. "Well, I hope we get a lift some way or other," said Ivan. "At any rate, we must get out of this. I know every step of this part of the city. This place belongs to Prince Nicolani. I used to play here all the time in this park." He led the way rapidly through the beautiful grounds, and entered a grove of noble trees. They went on and on through the shadows until they reached the open fields. Beside the highway, a great pile of hay lay scattered. "We might sleep here for the rest of the night," Ivan suggested. "Not if you can go on," said Warren. "I think we had better get as far from the city as possible." "Very well," said Ivan, "but let us rest for half an hour." They flung themselves on the hay, and in a moment Ivan was asleep. Warren could not rest, however, and sat staring moodily into the night. In half an hour he roused his friend, and they started onward. They proceeded in silence, each busily thinking. Warren trying to bear up and take his blows manfully, and Ivan at a loss to know what to say to the brave boy who had lost all he held dear in so terrible a manner. The road was level, and they went rapidly. As they rounded a sharp turn, they saw an automobile ahead of them. It was a low racing car, and stood at the side of the road. There was some trouble on, for a couple of men were bending over a wheel. "They have a puncture!" exclaimed Warren. "And they are headed towards Łódź. Let's see if they will give us a lift." He boldly approached the men, who started, and then looked relieved to see that it was a couple of boys. "What's the trouble?" said Warren in Polish. The man straightened and threw his hands up in a gesture of despair. "All the trouble in the world!" he exclaimed. "The tire is punctured, and I cannot mend it. I am not a chauffeur, but I can drive this car a little, and my master told me to bring it to him. I don't know what to do. Of course, As soon as it comes light, the soldiers will seize it." "I can fix the tire," said Warren. "I know all about it. But we are going to Łódź and ought not to wait. It's a long way." "Good," said the man. "We are going to Łódź too. There are only 2 seats, but we will carry you somehow. Only be quick and mend the tire. Our lives may depend on it." Warren turned the light on the wheel and went to work. He had always prided himself on his swiftness in working out tire troubles, and when he saw the bad tear in the tube, he took it off and replaced it with one of the new tires strapped to the rear of the machine. He worked in desperate haste, and Ivan, at his side, worked with equal desperation. The men watched or restlessly walked up and down the road, talking in undertones to each other. It was evident that their knowledge of cars was but slight, and they were forced to trust the young stranger if they were to proceed at all on their perilous journey. When the tire was in place and pumped up, Warren hastily collected the tools and started to replace them in the toolbox, but Ivan stopped him with a word. He spoke sharply to the men. "Take these things," he said. "We are ready." The man who had spoken first took the wheel, and his companion the other seat. Ivan sat on his knee, with Warren on the running board. It was soon evident that there was something wrong. The car went ploughing along at low speed, the engine bucking and starting. "Good heavens, Ivan!" exclaimed Warren, after a few miles of this jerky progress. "What ails the thing? Do you suppose the dub knows how to drive?" Ivan turned to the man at the wheel. "What's the matter?" he asked. "Do you know how to drive? What ails the car?" "I don't know," said the man. "In truth, I have never driven but twice, but I thought I could, and when the princess told me to bring this car after her, I was sure I could. She is ahead with her son and Princess Modjeska and some guests. I fear I will not be able to reach Łódź." He pressed a lever at random, and the car shot forward with a speed that nearly threw Warren from the step. Another frantic attempt, and she slowed down with suddenness that almost put the others through the windshield. "Here, stop!" commanded Warren. "Get out of that seat and let me drive. Ivan, tell him I simply eat cars." The machine stopped, and the man thankfully resigned his seat to Warren, who drew up the heavy motor gloves and settled himself in his seat. The car, a beautiful French model, was familiar to Warren, and he pressed the starter with perfect confidence. And he was justified. Like a swallow, the beautiful machine skimmed the smooth and level road, leaving Warsaw with all its tragedy and far behind. Warren had scarcely slept for 2 nights. He had had but little food, and his bandaged head felt light and strange. As they went on and on, Warren commenced to wonder if he could possibly make the distant city. At strange intervals, coloured lights flashed before his eyes, and faint booming noises sounded in his ears. They had not encountered a soul. It was as though the whole country, after its terrible conflict, lay dead. Finally, a faint streak of grey appeared in the east. Dawn was coming. "How far to Łódź?" he called. "Just over the hill?" "Just over yonder hill," said the man at his side. Warren slowed down and dropped one tired hand from the wheel. "Where are you going when you get to the city?" he inquired. "If we get through," the man replied. "I am to go to the palace, where lives the sister of our princess. She has turned it into a hospital. By a strange chance, our prince was taken there when he was wounded, and the princess must be there now." "Very well," said Warren. "Direct me when we reach the city." It grew brighter, and was quite light by the time they entered the quiet streets. Fortunately, they were not stopped, and with the guidance of the man beside him, Warren drew safely up before the wide stone steps of the palace. The car stopped. Warren shut off the engine, and the others jumped out, glad to stretch themselves. Warren alone made no effort to move. The others, after stamping their cramped legs, turned to look at him. His hand was still on the wheel, but he was unconscious. They carried him into the great hall, and a nurse in uniform directed them to an empty cot and hurried after a doctor. He pronounced it simply a case of exhaustion, and gave orders which the nurse rapidly fulfilled, motioning the others to leave as she did so. The servants turned to Ivan and thanked him for his assistance. For a moment Ivan thought that it would be a good plan to go to the princess and tell her that he was in Łódź. Then he decided that the presence of a boy in the city, although he was the son of her very good friend, would only cause her to feel responsible for his welfare or safety. So he merely nodded, turned his back to tell the nurse that he would return shortly, and then he walked listlessly down into the heart of the town. Hucksters were driving into the open market. Doors were opening here and there. A company of soldiers passed at double quick. Ivan wondered where they were going. He wondered, too, what possible chance he had of getting something to eat. There were no scouts in Łódź besides his tired self and the exhausted boy back in the hospital cot. Ivan thought of Warren with a gratitude that he could not have put into words. Warren had taught him so many things. With Boy Scout principles and Boy Scout training, he had changed from a haughty, helpless young aristocrat to a helpful, well-balanced boy, perfectly capable of taking care of himself and of assisting others as well. Ivan felt the change. He was so reliant, so strong. A few months ago he would have stood helpless in his present situation, conscious only that he was Prince Ivan Ivanovich and must be looked after. Now, as he faced the morning light, hungry, ragged, and with only the American nickel in his pocket, he smiled at fate and went on without fear to enter whatever adventure might come. The only thing that worried him was the want of enough money to buy himself a bit of bread and dried fish. He reflected that he could easily have asked the princess for enough to supply his wants, but he would not turn back. Ahead of him, an old man with a heavily laden cart was having trouble with a skittish horse. In vain he pulled on the lines. In vain he threatened and coaxed. The young creature would not stand, and while the old man worried with it, vegetables and long sticks of black bread were slyly stolen out of the end of his cart. Ivan approached. "Let me hold the horse, father," he said, taking it by the bridle as he spoke. The old man threw up his hands in a gesture of thankfulness. "Blessings on you, my son," he cried. "These thieves will ruin me while I speak with that foolish animal. Hold fast, my son, I will give you your breakfast." Ivan nodded, and the old man turned eagerly to his customers. Presently he reached over and handed Ivan a generous piece of bread and some fresh fruit. Ivan watched the throngs as he ate, holding the horse with his left hand, although it was now perfectly quiet. As he idly watched the persons passing, he noted that with the passing time the market had become crowded. People moved in throngs. Then, as the crowd before him happened to part, Ivan noticed in the distance a woman hurrying away. She had a big basket on her arm, filled with provisions. A little girl clung to her hand. She was ragged, dirty, and pale, but Ivan recognized Eleanor. Dropping the horse's rein, he dashed towards them, but the crowd had closed, and he was too late. The earth seemed to have swallowed them. Like a hound on a trail, he searched the market over and over, but not a trace could he find of the woman or child. In his surprise at seeing Eleanor, he had failed to take particular notice of the woman. But as he thought of it, he felt that it was not the one he had seen in Warsaw, and he remembered that that woman had spoken of her sister in Łódź. Feeling that there was nothing to be gained by remaining longer in the market, Ivan hurried back to the hospital, where he found Warren much better, and fretting because he was not allowed to get up. "Well, I've seen Eleanor," said Ivan as he entered the ward. Warren sat up, his eyes bulging under his bandage. "Have you? Honest?" he cried. "Where is she?" "Well, I lost her in the crowd," said Ivan, and told the whole story. Warren lay listening carefully. Well, as long as we know that she is here in the same town, we know we will find her, and there won't be any slip next time." His face clouded. "But, Ivan," he said huskily, "I can't bear to think of my dear Evelyn and poor father and little Jack." He closed his lips and shut his eyes in a desperate effort to control his grief. Warren's cot was drawn across a closed door, and on the other side of that door sat Evelyn, crying her heart out for her lost brother and sister. End of chapter 9.